Hi everyone, welcome for this episode 4 of the Jewflix web sessions. We're today going to have a session about WUJS, the World Union of Jewish Students, its history a bit, what it is, what it looks like today. We're going to try a bit to show you that the history of the World Union of Jewish Students is not recent. It's almost a century now. And hopefully we can also show you how much of a great impact a student union can have. Yeah, so we're just going to start now as it is. So the World Union of Jewish Students was founded in 1924. So almost a century ago, as I just said. It was founded by Herr Lauterpacht. This man was an Austrian Jew who was mainly fighting for the Jewish student rights in Europe before the Second World War. This man was mainly, so as you can see here, he's the first one on the left, top left of the screen. This man was very annoyed by the fact that a lot of universities, campuses, research centers had quotas for Jewish students. So, for example, if you would go to the Vienna campus, you would have only 2% of Jewish students allowed in the total of the university, which would limit a lot the rights of the students. For that reason, he decided to create an organization that would advocate and fight for the rights of Jewish students. So just remember also, this is before Second World War. This is before Nazi Germany expanded all over Europe. It's a moment where the first war is over. People feel it's the moment to have rights again and be able to participate in like go back to university, educate themselves, and get proper jobs. So he would start by creating the first World Union of Jewish Students Congress with delegates from 14 or 17 countries. It's not very clear how many exactly. That would join in Belgium with over 2,000 people in the Maccabi Gymnasium there to talk about the Jewish issues at the moment. So Jewish rights in a lot of countries, but also the struggles of Jewish communities after First World War, the struggle in university for a lot of Jewish students. From that Congress in 1924 is born one big idea to create the World Union of Jewish Students. The idea is to create an international organization that would fight for the right of Jewish students everywhere across the world. At the time, someone very known, which is the second picture in the middle of the screen, Albert Einstein, is a teacher in German and Austrian universities. He's a friend of Herr Lauterbart, and he will become the first president of the World Union of Jewish Students. So quite a big name. He will push very strongly to fight, of course, anti-Semitism that is rising, especially in Germany, and will give a lot of credibility to the organization in those recent years. In 1933, so the years pass by. The organization is based in London, in the UK. As the organization grows, the second Congress in 1933 will see people like that you see here also on the picture, like Sigmund Freud, like Chaim Weizmann, the first president of the State of Israel, and Nahum Bialik, who is a Jewish poet, become vice presidents of Albert Einstein board. So quite the names who have the chance to follow up today historically. This is people that will fight very, very strongly against the discrimination of Jewish people, but also for the rights of Jews and minorities all around the world. And this board will also be facing the very specific issue of like the rising of Nazi Germany and extreme neo-national movements that would be very, very hateful and aggressive towards the Jews. So coming the war, comes the first, like until 1939, just before the war, this board will mainly be working with universities to try and work on the quotas, etc. But as more present issues come, they will switch to that from that during the war period. So from 1939 to 1945, there is very little documents talking about the history of WUJS. The reason for that is very simple. The organization, main volunteers, activists, presidents, and others are a big part working for the resistance, either in France, either in countries surrounding Switzerland. They will move the office to Switzerland in 1936, if I'm not mistaken, and they will work very, very, very hard at the borders to pass Jewish people at the border during night times, to provide money and paperwork for the resistance in France, but also directly fighting on the ground with the resistance. This is a very, very important part to understand how a lot of Jewish activism is born. A lot of big unions that you see today, as like WUJS, for example, the French Union of Jewish Students, and many others, were established by the people who were fighting during those very difficult times. People that could, sadly, because of the reality of the ground, understand better than anyone else the struggles of the Jewish people and the dangers of not having a body and a voice to fight for yourself. So that's for the Second World War part. Between 1945 and 1960, the organization is a bit lost. It's very hard because the main focus of Jewish people right now is not to fight for places at universities, but rather to get back to their lives, get back to their homes, find their families, and be as a low profile Jew as possible. A lot of Jewish people don't want to be recognized as Jewish people. They want to be very shy about it and to not show it too much at university, at schools, at work. So the organization is struggling a bit to keep with its first agenda, but would help here and there to reconnect students with their families. But again, this is a period where the organization is not very alive and try to do much because there is so much other focuses. But in 1962, a team of people decides to hire a new Secretary General, which is named Dan Bitan.
I can actually, John, would you like some extra info on that? Because I can kind of give.
Please.
Sure. So Dan Bitan is this guy. He's Israeli, and the Jewish agency decides that they are going to that they want to restart WUJS. So they sent Dan as like a shaliach from Israel to go to like, I don't know, like France, I think Paris or London or somewhere like that, to try and restart WUJS or try and get it going. And he organizes a congress, which is where I think you're going to go on. Manfred Gerstenfeld is elected president in 1964. So Dan is not necessarily hired by WUJS. It's like the Jewish world is like, WUJS, you need to start doing stuff again. We're sending you a shaliach. Like, he'll make it work. Like, you know, Jewish agency still does these things today.
Amazing. Yeah, so learning on the way. Dan will then try to reestablish connections with European unions from East and West Europe, with Latin American unions, and also he will work on the 30th Congress that will happen in Jerusalem. So at that time, there will be a very strong action that will be taken under their leadership. That's the reopening and the recognition of German Jews back at WUJS. This is a very strong step because at the time there is absolutely there is a very big taboo about, of course, Jews in Germany and the history that just happened. And so bringing in back the German Jews, the Austrian Jews is a big step that is happening there. Following that, there is another big step that is going to happen, which is the election of Hunter. So Hunter is the first person who will try to shift a bit the work of WUJS to campaigning. So before that, most of the WUJS events and actions are made either directly with universities, either through programs where they would bring students, train them, form them, and then try to show them the rest of the vision of WUJS. But from 1960 to 1980, we have a very strong transition between the former structure of WUJS, which is more ground programming, to campaigning. So Hunter will be very actively campaigning on two very specific issues. The first one is the issue of Soviet Jews, Jewish people that are stuck in the Soviet Union, that are suffering back again from discriminations and very different issues about not letting them live their Jewish life alone. And this will be a very important key of how the WUJS structures changes. And he will run one of the biggest campaign at the time for WUJS with more than 30,000 signatures from all over Europe. 15,000 comes from the UK to try and support Eastern European Jews. So that's a big part. Hunter's work is really transitioning the job that he will be he will give again a very long reach visibility to WUJS. It goes this campaign goes on CNN. There is a very big protest in London in front of the embassies with more than 1,000 people. This is a very key element of the activism of the World Union of Jewish Students. But then happened something that you can't really prepare for, which is the 1967 war in Israel. So the 6-day war is very known. A lot of countries around Israel, Syria, Lebanon, Egypt, Jordan, etc., and Israel go to war. Israel win by a tremendous, incomprehensible, easy way, where it's recognized as a very strong army, a very strong country, a very strong military force, and that's great for Israel. But for students all around the world, this is a moment where the narrative around who is the weak side suffering from the aggression of others changes. On a lot of campuses all across the world, we will see the rise of very strong movements just starting to be very fearful and aggressive towards the Jewish state, and of course Jewish students, because Israel is now aggressing and taking the homes of Palestinians. This will be a very big shift in unions all across the world, but WUJS takes a lot of time to recognize that and to shift themselves for the needs of their students. So there is, during this period, a very big balance that is very hard to find between the Zionist idea that Jews should have a state because Second World War and Shoah and all the atrocities that happened to the Jews, but that for Jewish students on other campuses, it's not good if WUJS is too much Zionist because it harms them and give them a lot of issues. So this will be also a very key element that shapes WUJS. So in just after 1967, 2 months after the end of the war, the 14th Congress is happening in the newly conquered Jerusalem, and the honorary president, which is David Ben-Gurion, will give a speech there. This is again a very strong show of Zionism from the organization. They want to show like the pride of having just, of course, reconquered Jerusalem, their capital, etc. On the Congress itself, there is like, this is the moment where we really start to understand the difference between the diaspora Jewish community and the Israeli Jewish life, that are connected, very intricate, but are not the same. A lot of Jewish students ask WUJS to fight more for the political humanitarian fights that happen, yes, in Israel, but also everywhere else. And this is again where the balance will try to take place.
You're talking about like Vietnam and things like this, right?
Yes. So yeah, at the
Right.
time there is a lot of like, the context of war around the world is very heavy. Like there is a lot of wars happening all around the world. You have the Vietnam War. Like countries are very keen to go for war. Like still, even after like we have the UN and the Human Rights Council, etc. So there is a big pressure from students to ask WUJS to be fighting for that cause. And on the other hand, there is a request. So WUJS will ask, like the Congress will ask WUJS, the World Union of Jewish Students, to hire a political officer to deal with those issues. And on the other hand, they will ask also an Aliyah officer that would help make sure that students that come into Israel from all around the world are well integrated. There is even an establishment of a hostel helping students from all across the world come to Israel and establish themselves properly and study at Hebrew University. Following the 6-day war, and this is the next step probably of the structure. So following the next step is the World Zionist Organization is trying to reinvigorate themselves and try to work with try to implement and to add to their structure youth and student engagement. And so the president at the time agrees to partner with the World Zionist Organization, and this will be a very big mess for WUJS for a lot of years around that time, because the idea between the World Union of Jewish Students President Hunter at the time to become a partner of the World Zionist Organization is very simple, and it's something that you would hear a lot today also. There is definitely a lack of young leadership and future leadership in the big organizations, that especially the Zionist organization, and he wants to compensate that by bringing WUJS in. And he feels often students are used as decorative values more than proper activists and idea providers. And on the other hand, you have the issue that there is a big feeling that there is a try from the World Zionist Organization to transform WUJS into something that it's not. WUJS was created to defend the rights of Jewish students all across the world, and not to defend Aliyah, for example. Like not only, it's the idea is to that it should represent as much as diaspora students as much as Israeli students. And this is where the World Zionist Organization and WUJS partnership will suffer a lot during the years that are coming. In 1968, the World Zionist Organization agrees to give proper voting and rights to all the students that are part of the organization. They will have the same sittings as everyone else. WUJS and other student organizations get voting rights. And at the Congress, it is voted, and the World Union of Jewish Students come with requests that will be approved at the time by the World Zionist Organization, except one that I think is the the organization of a youth seminar that would let students also decide for their initiatives, and that will be the one request that is not granted at the time. That will be a project in partnership in the future. So coming after that, we come to the 70s. So the 70s are the years where a lot of the Israeli world shifts also itself, and WUJS tries to follow with that. So there is WUJS will be one of the first organizations that will push forward the rights of Palestinians to self-determination as much as Israelis. There is a big controversy going around that. They will be rejected from a lot of Zionist organizations. The WZO will cut their funds to WUJS and ban it from the 1972 Congress, where Israeli politicians will try to create another WUJS, which they want to call the World Union of Zionist Youth. That will never see the day, but the idea is ironically opposite of what WUJS stands for. The idea for them is to create an organization that would represent the interest of Israeli politics in the youth, rather than with what WUJS is doing today, represent the rights and fights for the values of Jewish students from all across the world, everywhere else. So this is one of the big, I would say, fracture between the World Union of Jewish Students and the Zionist movement. But this is also, sadly, because WUJS was so close to it, it's putting the organization into a very difficult place financially, and also in terms of connections, where it lost a lot of their support. So in the years that follow, there is two things that happen that are very important. One, in the end of the 70s, in 1977, Talia Fishman launches a project which is called Arevim. Arevim is a big program that is sending Jewish volunteers, Jewish students, to support small Jewish communities or big Jewish communities in Europe, Eastern and Western. So you have that in Madrid, in Rome, in Belgrade, London, Amsterdam, and many other places. The idea is to help Jewish communities build their identities up. A lot of Jews have either the identity of very religious people or either of very Zionist people, and that's it. The idea is really to show that diaspora have a Jewish identity, and that this is something they should educate for, and that when kids grow up, they should be proud to be Russian Jews, French Jews, and many others. This is a really big program that got a lot of support during the last years of the Soviet bloc, and that will be a big part of the WUJS programming during those years. In 1979,
I was going to say,
yeah.
Arevim also sent people beyond Europe afterwards, later on, and WUJS sent people to Peru and
Okay.
Kenya, and places you really wouldn't expect Jews, like Finland, and the idea was to go to places where shlichim wouldn't go, right? That was a big part of it as well. So to places in Africa, to places in Latin America, etc. And many of these people stayed, in fact. I don't know if you've ever come across Elise Lieberman in Poland, who runs the Toby Center for Holocaust Education. So she went to Poland 30 years ago as a WUJS Arevim fellow, and today she still works in the Jewish community in Poland, in Warsaw.
Wow.
Okay. Many of these.
So apparently the impact has been strong from this from this program. So following that step, there is it's maybe not that important today, but I think it's a funny paraphrase. In 1979, WUJS has its own Brexit, where the Union of Jewish Students would leave the Congress because they're not happy with the current leadership, and for them the organization is too Zionist and taking too much ties with and coming back again to work too close with Zionist organizations without having any other options. So Brexit before time, but at least here they came back. So who for UJS?
I'd say we didn't leave. We didn't leave WUJS. We left the room of the Congress. Not that I was there in the 70s, but that's that I'm told. I don't know if you know this. You know, the French Union of Jewish Students left EUJS for 6 years in the 80s. They
Wow,
refused
okay.
to be a member of EUJS, and they would only be a member of WUJS. And the WUJS chair was like a mediator between the EUJS presidents and the French EUJS president, who wouldn't talk to each other.
It shows how many Jews are capable of working together. Not much.
Completely.
Yeah. So honestly, after that, so in 1980 happens a very big step for WUJS, is the moving of the offices from London, UK to Jerusalem, Israel. This is the thing that was also fought by by a lot of unions, that the organization becomes too Zionist, and the move to Jerusalem was a big step of like indecisiveness. Like, will the move implicate that the organization becomes super pro-Israel, and we will only have Israeli presidents that would do not understand anti-Semitism in the diaspora, or many other issues, etc. So the move itself was a very welcome decision at Congress, but the following decision was less. It was the partnership on Arevim with the Jewish Agency. The fact it was not that welcome, it was because the Jewish Agency at the time was mainly focusing on bringing Jews to Israel, Aliyah, and that most of the Arevim program's idea was to strengthen the Jewish identity of the diaspora. So very contradictory ideas that would try to come along in the Arevim project. That would again very much limit the impact of WUJS in a lot of their plans. In 1983, someone had a great idea to partner with WJC, the World Jewish Congress. This partnership is something that was very key to allow WUJS to go out of the Zionist perspective only and open it to a whole new place and field of projects and initiatives that they could get support from other organizations and not only Zionist ones. WUJS never wanted to be a fully Zionist organization, or to not be at all Zionist. The idea is not that WUJS wants to be deciding in a sense to support or not support the Jewish politics at the time. WUJS believes very strongly in the right of like Jewish determination and having a Jewish state. But the issue was that one would take the hand over the second, and a lot of issues were forgotten for one, which would cause the fights between the students. So in 1987, one of the most famous chairs today of WUJS is Yosef Abramovich. So Yosef Abramovich is elected at 22 in 1987, and he again tries to shift WUJS to more global issues, to more progressive campaigns, and he will launch two very specific projects. One is the fight for Ethiopian Jews. This will be a very big fight where he will go to many Jewish organizations, many Zionist organizations, and try to push forward the support of the Ethiopian Jews. That at the time, it was the time of the missions of bringing back all the Ethiopian Jews to Israel. And this was a very big controversy in Israeli society and the Jewish people. So WUJS will be a very big advocate of that. And the second big project, which I think was very much showing how WUJS and how students can be ahead of the time and taking initiatives that are absolutely amazing, was the WUJS Women Project. So this was a leadership project that was built only for young Jewish women throughout the world. The proposal was written by Yosef Abramovich, but it will be done by his successor, Heather Harris. So Heather Harris will take office in the 90s, and he will be the one putting into place this women project, which will again train women for leadership positions, which at the time, especially in Jewish organization, was very, very not common. And again, this shows how much like Jewish students can bring society and human, I would say, initiatives forward. So lastly, there is the, so in the 90s, there is, of course, the end of the Soviet wall. The blocks, the Cold War ends, and a lot of the ideology of WUJS that was trying to provide for East European Jews, sorry, is ended. This is the end of this kind of projects. Now borders are getting opened back again. Those Jews are either making Aliyah, either establishing proper Jewish communities. So there is no need anymore for the WUJS work there as much as there was before. And so WUJS will try to, again, reshape itself for the best needs of their students at the time. Especially at those times, there is the development of networks, phones, etc. So the relationship between unions are becoming way more structured and organized and possible to reach out to from Latin America to Israel to Australia to the US, etc. So there will be much more work on providing and supporting the leaders of each union. And that's what the final shift, I think, of WUJS to today. So going back from like specific programs in regions that need it becomes a global project that, okay, South America, Latin America needs that kind of opportunities. That's what's going to bring them. Israel needs that kind of project. That's what we're going to bring them. India needs a campaign. That's what we can bring. And so with the development of communications and of course, the development of unions all around the world, WUJS will become way more an international body, an umbrella body representing all the unions that I think like what it has mostly become today. So I skipped the last 15, 20 years. The reason for that is very simple. First of all, I don't have enough data on that. And I don't want to say any silly mistakes. But also those people would come very soon in a series on Jewflix to talk themselves about the last 30 years, I would say, of WUJS, and hopefully we'll get very exciting stories from them. So I will leave that up to them. I will just pursue with a little presentation of WUJS today and what I believe we aim to do with it. So WUJS is today the World Union of Jewish Students, leading Jewish student leaders and unions. It's a very big name. You can put whatever you want under it, but what does it really mean? So first of all, it means more than 43 national unions. So you have very recent ones like Ethiopia, Chile, Peru, and a few others, to very old ones like the French, the UK, Australia, unions that have been existing for a lot of times and that have been very, very strongly established. The second thing is that WUJS tries to be representing as much as high values as possible. And so that comes in the 100% democratic way. Most of the organization, everyone at the organization, like the positions are elected at the Congress with votes. To be voting organization, you have to be democratic yourself and well established with proper paperwork, and everything goes beyond. This is a very key element to ensuring that, yes, we are students, but we will show the way on the values we want to see in the Jewish world. So there are three main categories to the WUJS, I would say, plan. One is political activism. As you've heard, there is very much a need for a big and strong Jewish student voice, especially on the international bodies, especially in big Jewish organizations and non-Jewish organizations. Jewish students have a strong opinion, have a lot of issues they want to be impactful on. It comes from Israel, of course, to climate change, for example. And that's why having a strong political voice is very key. The second part is leadership empowerment. So leadership and empowerment is the key thing that WUJS has always been doing, and that it will always do or should always do. Representing is good, but ensuring that every union gets every tool they need, every opportunity they need to build their union, strengthen themselves, become sustainable on the long term is very, very, very important. And hopefully in the future, that's something when we can say this union is stable because we just gave it help, but also today, like in the future, if unions don't need WUJS that much anymore, that's wonderful because it means they become sustainable and we can focus on other unions that need our help. So that's the second part. And the third part is, of course, improving and making WUJS more sustainable, more efficient, bigger, with a proper staff and everything that goes with that. So there are three main programs happening today, which are the WUJS and Branchman Fellowship, which is a group, sorry, very third throat. So the WUJS Branchman Fellowship is a program where students from all across the globe will go to the US and meet with many Jewish organizations, discover a bit of the American Jewish life, which is, I think, very unique, but also on the other way around, show a lot of the big Jewish foundations, a lot of the big Jewish organizations, how other diaspora communities work, what are the big issues, what are the big qualities they have, and what we could learn from each other. So that's one of the programs that is happening. It's starting every year in December at the Congress and finishes in June. The second program is the WUJS and Masa internship. So this is an internship where you would go for the summer to Israel for 6 weeks, work in a startup, in a company, in Jewish organizations, very much targeting leadership skills. The idea is to train the future Jewish student leaders to have the qualities they need for coming back to their communities and working in their unions or in their youth movement, I don't know, Shomer, Bnei Akiva, many others, etc. The last program, or the first program and the main program of WUJS, is the Congress. The Congress is very simple. Imagine a room where you would have every student leader from all across the world debating on the most pressing and important issues for them. That's Congress. Congress is packed with Jewish student leaders. It's packed with high quality speakers. This year we had Rivlin, we had Gantz, we had many other speakers coming from all over the world over the years that were absolutely incredible. My first Congress was in 2016. I was so happy I attended. It was absolutely amazing. And one, I think, of the most exciting for the Jewish Student Leader Initiative is the WUJS Awards that were created in 2014, which guarantee, yes, definitely an amazing initiative. It gives an award to a union, a specific national or local union, for the work they've done. Especially in the volunteer Jewish world, you don't get a lot of recognition, and this is something for WUJS that is very important, that we recognize the work of our unions and everything they're doing. And those awards, mine is just there on my wall. I mean, it's something that can give a lot of pride and also a lot of value to students and push them going forward. So if you're a union and you want to show what you've done, every year before Congress, you can apply, and a committee that is very, very qualified will try to pick the best unions out of the lot and reward them. So that's the three main programs we have today. And this is three projects we want to implement. So there is three things we want to implement, and this is also before coronavirus outbreak. So I would add now that everything will be delayed, but also that we added Jewflix here. That is an amazing, I think, program that we have started. So one is the Israeli and Diaspora Seminar. This seminar will be working to bring, I would say, between 20 to 30 Jewish student leaders from all across the world to meet with Israeli politicians, non-Israeli politicians, ambassadors of Israel to their countries, of the countries to Israel, to try and discuss about the dialogue of Israeli and diaspora communities. A lot of time, this relationship is very difficult. It can hurt very badly, like we've seen in some countries like Austria or Brazil, with very far-right government being supported by Israel, or it can be very benefic in other countries. So it's very dependent on the situation, but we really want to ensure that there is a proper discussion between Jewish communities from all across the world, Jewish students, leaders, and Israel. The second thing is the WUJS incubator. This is a program that I think a lot of people and presidents in the past have tried to start or did. The idea is to have small grants allocated to local and national unions that need it for new initiatives. There is a very big difficulty for unions to fundraise for new initiatives because the fear of change, the fear of empowerment, the fear of innovation. And also there is no guarantee. I mean, if a union that is volunteer work fails, there is no back of the investment. I mean, it's either the system works and the program works, either the money is lost. So it's very key that our union is able to provide smaller and newer unions or newer initiatives in bigger unions the support they need to start. It's financial, but also experience, contacts, knowledge, network, etc. So this, hopefully, we hope to launch it by the end of the year. Because of, again, the situation right now, we're going to see how everything evolves. But if you have any ideas, let us know. It would be amazing. And the last thing is the Jewish Student Leader Platform. So the idea is to have one online platform where every union leader that just get into a union can connect, discuss, exchange, read the old topics, bring new topics up, adapt polls, use it for their own unions meetings and many other things. The reason for that is because we believe it's great, like we are very much able to connect a lot of unions during the year, but it's very key that we're able to bring them a platform to connect even when we cannot connect them between themselves. And so they always have the initiative to reach out without being dependent on our capacity to do so. And hopefully that's also something that would come up very soon. So the last thing is the Jewflix web series. That the idea was, it was very simple for it. We want to provide content, we want to provide initiatives, we want to provide fun for you guys, even during those difficult times. And we hope that through this amazing series, we're able to do it. There is also a form if you want to propose a session that you would like to do. We have like the dates that are still open on the form, and you can pick your date and propose a topic, and we'll be coming back to you to handle all the technical issues to help you go forward. That's like, I think, 3 very representative pictures of the last Congress. So the first one is FEMEC, the Mexican Union, that you can see a bit cut, but it's a very dynamic union, doesn't exist for a long time now, 3 years, doing so many incredible stuff. Like you can see, I think the rewarding face of getting an award, I think it's amazing. The second one is when we went at Rivlin House, the president of Israel, to meet with him and talk with him. It was, I think, also an amazing opportunity that was organized by my predecessor, Abigail, and congrats to her for organizing that. And the last one is, I think, Samuel, a French member of the UJS board, presenting an idea to everyone in the room. And again, like, this is just Congress, but this shows a bit in a cluster how much of different things you can be doing at the Congress. I will just come quickly about the tools we have for political activism. Social and classic media is, of course, the networks with web, TVs, and journals. You have the Jewish and non-Jewish partners, of course, the next generation leaders that mostly you guys, the the generations to come will be counting on you to do a lot of the political activism. So we hope to train you well enough. And the national and international institution like UNESCO, like the UN, where Jewish student organization usually don't have that much space. But WUJS, EUJS, for example, have spots there and would bring students to speak up. This is just to finalize the quick structure of how WUJS functions today. So you have on the left, you can see the board. So boards come from 7 blocked spots, which are Europe, Israel, Latin America, Australasia, South Africa, UK, and France, and 4 open spots. So if you come from any other country, you can also run through those 4 spots. The board is the one deciding the long-term vision of the organization, the political red lines and main line, everything in between. Then you have the executive, which is the president, the executive director, and the treasurer, which are handling the representation of the organization, the day-to-day work, and putting into face the long-term vision of the board. And of course, the staff and volunteers that would work on the communications, on the political work, on the programs, etc. And then you have 3 other things are evolving around that. The advisory council, which is WUJS alumni that helped the structure evolve during the time, and that also help us because they have experience in dealing with WUJS. So older presidents, predecessors, etc., would join that advisory council. You have the partners, of course. There is so many partners that support us every year for our projects, from the World Jewish Congress, American Jewish Committee, the World Zionist Organization, Massa. There are so many, I couldn't name them all, but anything we do would not be possible without them. And of course, the final big body that decides everything, the General Assembly. And the General Assembly is composed by every student union. So for example, the Swiss Student Union would have six votes and would send delegates to votes at the General Assembly to take decisions. And every union is the same. And that's the very key and core democratic structure of the organization. So I hope this resumes well. This gives you a bit of an understanding of why unions all around the world need WUJS, of why partners need WUJS to access all the students and the future leaders. Why do we all need a student organization that is strong and capable of representing us all around the world? I'm very proud to have been elected to be the head of this organization for the years to come. It's a very exciting and challenging opportunity, and hopefully we will be able to go with it until the end. If you have any questions, unmute yourself. Now is the moment. Feel free to ask anything. And yeah, thank you very much. If no one has questions, I can just end on that. Up to you guys.